Since legislative leadership announced their transportation plans on Tuesday, several of you have asked for my reaction. We received the bill on Tuesday night, and I wanted a chance to study it in detail. My team and I have done that over the last 48 hours, and so I want to offer some comments. In fact, I wish we had a little bit more time to reflect on it and ask some more questions, but I understand they're going to take it up and vote on it as early as Monday. Basically, the leadership's proposal raises taxes and fees on drivers everywhere to fix the T's operating deficit and almost nothing more. The leadership's proposal includes authorization for $300 million in Chapter 90 funds for local road and bridge projects, just as I have proposed, but it doesn't provide enough funding to actually get that work done. There is no funding here to meet our legal obligation to extend the Green Line, or to build South Coast Rail, or bring the Blue Line service to Lynn, or fix the main transportation artery in Springfield, or continue the train service to the Cape after this summer. There is nothing here to update the 40-year-old Red Line cars, or the 30-year-old Orange Line cars, or the T on the T, or any of the buses in any of the RTA routes. There is nothing to fix the grade crossings in Framingham that slow the commute from Metro West, or to modernize any of the commuter rail cars. Not only does this proposal shortchange the T and every community outside of Boston, it shortchanges every parent or business owner who cares about the readiness of our young people for the workplace. If you live in any of the places that are or would be affected by the services I just named, even though the services that benefit you would not be improved, the leadership's proposal has you paying more for gas, more to register your car, more to drive on the Pike, more for a Charlie card, and more for a commuter rail ticket. In other words, from all we can tell, everybody pays more and gets less. I can't see why that is either good policy or, frankly, good politics. I've been clear from the start that I'm willing to compromise, and I've made numerous overtures to the leadership and to individual members. I've also been clear that the final revenue package must be sufficient to meet our needs, dedicated in the case of transportation, and fair. This bill is neither sufficient nor fair. It is certainly not a job growth plan. I appreciate that the Speaker, the Senate President, and their teams have worked hard at this. Both the Speaker and the Senate President have expressed their concern about the impact of new taxes on the middle class and on working people generally, and I share that concern. But let's be clear. The leadership's proposal taxes the middle class. This proposal taxes the middle class every time they pump a gallon of gas, every time they buy a pack of cigarettes, every time they buy a Charlie card or take a commuter train, every time they wait for a bus or train that's not coming, every time they have to repair or replace a tire that was blown out on account of a pothole, every time somebody has to take the long way home or to work because the bridge was out. It's a fiction to claim that somehow this bill avoids new taxes. Everybody, whether a member of the legislature or of the general public, knows we need new taxes if we want better and more modern transportation and education systems. The question is, what do you get for what you pay? The leadership's answer is more of the same or less. The middle class in Massachusetts is a concern for the Speaker, the Senate President, and I believe for every member of the legislature, and certainly for me. The middle class in Massachusetts needs roads and bridges repaired in their communities because it improves the quality of their lives, saves them time, and keeps them safe. My proposal does that. The leadership's does not. The middle class in Massachusetts have kids who cannot afford the college education they need to move themselves forward. My proposal helps them. The leadership's does not. The middle class in Massachusetts who ride the T or commuter rail or the Pike, or who register their car every 2 years or get it inspected every year, would be better off if their fares and tolls and fees rose more gradually. My proposal does that. The House bill does not. And above all, the middle class in Massachusetts need better jobs and a stronger economy, and need it sooner rather than later. My proposal provides that. The leadership's proposal does not. The leadership's proposal is a return to an old way of doing business. It's the same short-term fiscal shell game that got us the big dig and the mess that followed. In the past 6 years, working with this Speaker, this Senate President, and all of their colleagues in the legislature, we have largely changed that. We have worked together to make serious and important changes in the way things are done around here. We have a track record of reform we can all be proud of. But in supporting this bill, we would all take a step back from all of that. It's not about me or them. It's not about the income tax or the gas tax at the end of the day. It's not about my number versus their number. It's about pretending to fix a problem rather than actually fixing one. If this bill passes, and it may, we'll be back in a couple of years in the same place. Chronic budget problems at the T, structurally deficient bridges, clogged intersections on I-95 in Woburn and Canton, a crumbling viaduct on I-91 in Springfield with chunks of it falling off just yesterday, no green line to Medford, no train to New Bedford, red line cars stuck open with doors stuck open, again, just like yesterday. Without a doubt, more businesses wondering why they can't find the talent they need for the jobs they have, and more kids unable to afford the degrees they need to get those skills, and a public even more skeptical of government's ability to do what it's supposed to do well. They'll be looking at a third tax increase proposal and fare hike in 6 years, and they'll wonder where it has all gone. A long-term solution to our transportation and our education challenges is not easy. I get that. I have asked for a lot, and that has made a lot of my friends in the legislature and in the general public uncomfortable. I get that too. I still believe we are in the midst of the process of finding a solution, not at the end of it. But I want to be clear that I cannot support another effort to kick the can down the road, and I will not. I'm happy to take your questions.
What do you intend to do about it?
Well, the first thing I've done is express my views. They have asked, and you have asked. I'm hoping that there'll be members of the legislature and of the general public who will make their agreement known to the leadership and beyond. If it comes to me in the current form, if that's your question, I'm going to have to veto it. That's not a surprise to you. It won't be a surprise to the members of the legislature. But as I said, I see this as a process. I understand, we put our proposal out. We worked on it for a year. As you know, we had thousands of people involved and lots of experts and did pro formas. It's very transparent. We've answered lots and lots of questions. We now have a proposal from the legislative leadership, which apparently they're going to vote on next week. And I hope between now and then, and the time and as it moves through the legislature, we'll have some further opportunity to engage.
Just quick follow, their view seems to be it's too much, too fast, without enough reform and savings first.
Well, I understand that may be their view. It's interesting the Secretary can speak to the number of reforms in addition to those the legislature has already enacted that we propose that they haven't yet acted on. Reform and revenue are not mutually exclusive. They have to go side by side. And everyone in the legislature knows, and they will acknowledge, at least in private conversation, that we're going to need new revenue in order to get a modern system. What is plain is that there is such a thing as too small. And this bill at $500 million means everybody, everywhere, is going to be asked to pay more for more of the same, and in many cases less.
You have been arguing since you unveiled your plan.
Say it again?
You've been after lawmakers to show some courage here. They're up for re-election. You, however, are not. So why didn't you propose something like this back when you were up for re-election?
Well, first of all, the point about courage is an acknowledgement that this is hard. This would have been hard, 2 years ago, 6 years ago. It's hard today. It's hard for everybody, including me. Nobody runs for office with the idea of taxes. Last year, you remember, 3 years ago, I think it was, we put forward a plan to have a permanent or at least a long-term fix in transportation. It was in connection with that, Chairman. You remember I proposed the gas tax and had my head handed to me. It's not like we haven't been working at this for some while. We did a tremendous number of reforms back then in terms of collapsing these, whatever it was, 6 agencies into one, taking all kinds of efficiencies out or inefficiencies out of the system, about which I think we are all all of us in this building, not just in this administration, very, very proud. Last year, we were exactly with the T operating deficit where we said we would be at the time we proposed the gas tax when it was voted down. And the legislature stepped in and closed that gap for 1 year and instructed us to go and develop a plan. That is what we did. And we spent a year and nearly a year and many, many hearings, and thousands of people were involved. And we presented that thoughtfully. We were very transparent about the numbers. There are pro formas out there about what the spend would be for and where it would come from. And in response to that, there's been a whole lot of give and take, not just with you ladies and gentlemen in the media, but with the larger public and with the members of the legislature as well.
What compromise would you suggest today be pursued? You said yesterday you're open to compromise. What compromise are you offering? One, and two, are you suggesting fares might go up if the bill comes through as proposed?
Well, let me take the second part first. And that is, the bill that's proposed has, I think it is $350 million of T solves, I guess. I forget what the term is. You'll remember. We had 250, I think, roughly, in our original proposal, and that was fees, fares, and tolls, gradually over time. This takes that and amps it up, so those fees, fares, and tolls would go up faster. That's going to happen under the bill that the House will consider next week. In terms of a compromise, it's strange to negotiate this way, but I've negotiated before in this building and elsewhere. I understand, and I think many of the people here do, about meeting somewhere in the middle. I think there is a good place somewhere in the middle and a good way to get there where we can have really a long-term fix. I don't know whether, Secretary, you want to add to. No. Okay, Jen. Hang on one second, Jan. Hang on one second, okay? Yeah, Janet? Excuse me, I think you were first.
You have said repeatedly that the situation and the problems are severe. If you got this bill, would you rather do nothing than do what the legislature is proposing?
Well, what the legislature is proposing is limited to closing the T's short-term operating deficit, and that's about it. There is a proposal in this bill for additional Chapter 90 funding, the local road and bridge program, as you know, local road program, as you know. We are deeply skeptical about whether there's enough revenue actually to do that work. So everybody who drives a car anywhere, everybody who registers a car anywhere, anybody who pays a toll pays more in order for us to close that T operating deficit. That does not deal with red line cars that have doors that stick open and that are 40 years old and 30-year-old orange line cars and the interest people have reasonably and fairly to see the service run longer. It's not going to deal with needs in other parts of the Commonwealth. It's not going to keep up with our structurally deficient bridge backlog. So, if we're going to fix a problem, let's really fix a problem, and let's really have that conversation. That's what we were invited to do. We did that work in good faith in response to the legislature and the public, and it's now time for the legislature to engage with us at that level.
So, but are you saying that you would rather do nothing than pass this bill?
I am saying that if this bill comes to my desk in this form, I'm going to have to veto it. Hang on one second.
When were you made aware of the crumbling concrete on I-91? What was done to fix it, and how does this underline the need for transportation funding?
Let me do the first and the second question, and then ask the Secretary to come forward for the first and the third question, and then ask the Secretary to come forward for the second. I was out in Otis today, and one of your colleagues told me about it, and one of my colleagues told me about it and said it was leading on the news last night. It was a chunk of concrete that came down in the roadway. The I-91 viaduct, you will know this, others here may not, but the I-91 viaduct is the central transportation artery for Western Massachusetts, right up through Springfield. If that's down, we have a big, big problem on our hands. It's a big, big project, and it's a costly one. And this bill doesn't have any of the resources. This bill, meaning the legislature's proposal, doesn't have any resources to help us deal with it. Do you want to speak to the repair?
Sure, go.
Excuse me.
And so the answer on the 91 viaduct in terms of repair, we're spending several $1,000,000 a year now just to patch and replace concrete and other issues. We will have to continue to do that if we don't have it funded. As you know, that was, I think, the largest highway project we had funded under the Way Forward plan. It has to happen at some point. In the meantime, we're just going to throw bad money after bad money to keep it open. As the governor said, there's no choice. We can't keep it, we can't close it. It has to be open, but it will be in continued disrepair.
And Governor, just to follow up, what would you say to the lawmakers who are progressive and they want to go along with this deal, but they're afraid of re-election and rattling leadership?
Well, look, first of all, I get that leadership runs these bodies. You know, I'm clear about that. I don't see how it's good politics for anybody to vote to raise taxes on everybody without being able to show that you're delivering something at home. We made a proposal that enables people to show that every community in the Commonwealth, particularly those in central and western Massachusetts and the South Coast, the Cape, the North Shore and Merrimack Valley, that have been starved of infrastructure investment all during the Big Dig and for much of the time since, would have something to show for that investment. Not made-up projects, but projects that have been waiting, serious, important projects that have been waiting. And not every project that is worthy, but those where we knew there would be a strategic benefit. So how it is folks make that vote and then go make the vote on the leadership proposal and go home and say, you're going to pay more, but you're not going to see more? I don't get those politics. Allison?
Governor, you've been meeting with leadership for months and months and months on this. Do you feel like you were kind of blindsided by this? Did you really like to believe that they were going to put forth a deal that was closer to where you are?
Well, I guess I would say this. I really like the Speaker and the Senate President, and I have enjoyed working with them. And no, there's not a but coming. I really do enjoy them, and I respect the challenges of their job. We have talked about a couple of different alternatives. I will say that I've done most of the talking in those conversations. But I learned about the, and when I say alternatives, I mean both in terms of the size of the package and the way to raise the revenue for the package, Allison. I don't think there's anybody who can say that we haven't bent over backwards to try to understand, and I'm not just the Speaker and the Senate President, but the Ways and Means heads and many members as well, that we haven't bent over backwards to try to engage substantively on how we have a long-term solution on both transportation and education. But the proposal that's that's out of Ways and Means, I guess yesterday or that's Wednesday. I learned about when I guess it was an hour before they announced it on Tuesday, and saw the bill late Tuesday night. So it's a little bit surprising. And I guess I would say this: look, you know, there have been representations made that, and maybe Janet, this goes to something you were asking me earlier, that $500 million actually does some of the stuff that we can't see it does. You know, so have a hearing. Let's see. Our proposal was tested. It wasn't dreamt up. It wasn't cooked up. It was worked up with actual projects, actual estimates, and actual numbers. And it's very transparent. So if folks say that this $1 actually pays $2 for those two different projects, let's see that. Let's put that to the test. As far as we can tell, as I said, this bill is going to be about asking everybody to pay more and see nothing in their own communities, and I just don't see why that makes sense.
Governor, they said on Tuesday, Speaker Rubio and Senate President Kennedy said, you know, look, your plan is just too ambitious, and in fact, the economy here in Massachusetts is still struggling to come back.
Well, first of all, my plan was ambitious, but it was not fantasy. It was built up from listening to the very people they say they're concerned about. These were not projects that we pulled out of thin air. These were projects that members of the public, leaders in the business community, small and large, transportation advocates, many others said were important to them, and important in terms of job growth. What is it, 87 economists acknowledge that we get accelerated job growth and expanded opportunity by making precisely these kinds of investments. And at the same time, I said there was nothing magic about that number. That if we were going to have a conversation, let's have a conversation about what things we take off and what things we keep in and why. And in particular, in the case of transportation, although I will say in education, it's also very much about the long term. Let's do the things that just become more expensive if we don't do them now and bite that proverbial bullet. And as I say, I don't think that the leadership's proposal does that.
Well, do you understand why you failed to persuade them?
Well, like I said, I don't think it's done, but if the question is fail to persuade them, it takes two to engage. It takes two parties to reach a deal, not just me coming in and talking to them and talk to. Agree these are wise investments. Mostly what I have heard is concerns about the politics of taxing. And I think there's a way to do this where everybody wins, and most importantly, the people we serve win, which is the reason I made the proposal in the first place.
Governor, you said you've spent a considerable amount of time over the past few months talking with individual lawmakers. Are you confident you have the votes in either branch to sustain it?
What a great question. No, I'm not. I mean, the reason I say that, Matt, is not because of the count. It's because, my count, and because people will say sometimes one thing to me and another thing back in their body, and I get that, right? They have different relationships that they're trying to manage. I totally get that. But as I say, it's very hard for me to imagine that the politics of a vote that says you, my constituents, are going to pay more, but you're not actually going to get anything from this, makes sense. And if politics is what people are trying to think through, I think the politics are with us. But let me just step back from that point. When I ran in 2006, I said that the reason I was running was because I wanted us to start governing for the next generation, not just the next election cycle or the next news cycle. That we had to be about making the hard decisions right now that we knew would leave the Commonwealth better and stronger. And I have been about that, and time after time, the legislature has been a partner in that. And those votes weren't easy either. That's what this is. And what has been proposed is a fundamentally different philosophy than that. And that's why I can't support it and won't.
Following on Matt's question, do you even, in order for many of the things in the proposal to even get a vote from the House or the Senate, someone from the floor is going to offer it because it's not in the House or the Senate's plan. Do you even have anybody that would be willing to offer an income tax item from the floor of the House or Senate?
Well, first of all, I don't think this is all about the income tax.
Well, that's
But
the main funding for what you want to do.
well, what I've said over and over, Janet, is there's more than one way to do this. I do happen to think, and apparently polls support the idea, that a modest increase in the income tax that's targeted for the things we've talked about in transportation and education is more popular than a gas tax that doesn't accomplish those things, and a gas tax all on its own, for that matter. And in terms of the amendment strategy, which is what I think you're asking me about, I'm not going to comment on that yet.
Would you help
Governor,
lawmakers
did you
with
ask-
their campaign financing?
Hmm?
Would you help lawmakers with their campaign financing? They needed some help and they wanted to side with you and
Would I help them with their campaign finance? You mean, would I make a contribution, or would I help them in their campaigns? Help them raise. I will help them do whatever they need to. Look, I think that this vote is important for the future of the Commonwealth. I think it's important for our economy. I think it's important for our way of life. And if that means that people are going to need help when it's time for them to run for reelection in explaining that vote and defending it? Yes, and I've been clear with individual members and with the leadership. I'd be proud to be a part of that. Matt, I'm sorry. Hang on one sec, John.
Speaker to delay Monday's debate and vote on this plan?
I think they, I think I'm right. Did I read in your stuff that they took up was there a proposal or an amendment to a motion during the rules debate or something like that to delay it for a hearing, something like that?
Oh, I think so.
I think so, and it was voted down. I mean, I think look, it's wise, but I don't run their bodies, I have to respect it. I think it is fair for people to have a chance to push and prod and ask questions about their plan in the same way that folks had an opportunity, a lot of opportunity, to push and prod and ask questions and about our plan and suggest alternatives. But you know, the speaker runs the House, not me.
The leadership the other day said their plan would forestall an immediate fare hike on the T. Were they telling the truth?
I think they're right that it forestalls this year's fare hike, and I'll let the Secretary speak to that. But they have built in fare fee and toll hikes, just as we did, John. I want to be clear. That was in our plan. Ours are very gradual and regular. Theirs are not. Do you want to say more?
Thank you. And the other point, John, is this. We need new red line cars. We need new orange line cars. We were not kidding when we said we had $1 billion problem with transportation. The only way the T can raise revenue is fares. So not only does the plan assume higher fare increases just to cover the operating deficits, we're going to have to find a way to fund these capital projects, and that would be with fare increases too. So the answer is yes, fares are going to have to go up at the T significantly in order to pay for the plan the legislature put out.
Mr. Secretary, does the red line incident trigger any automatic reporting requirements to the federal transportation agencies?
Usually we do report to the FTA, yes.
And did you hear?
I'm sorry?
Did you?
I don't know, Janet. I could certainly check with the MBTA general manager. I'm sure we did, though.
What about the lack of a second bidder for the commuter rail contract? What's up with that?
So I'm recused from that, John, so I can't answer any questions on it.
I mean, it's so funny. You asked the question exactly the way I did.
What answer did you get?
Well, I haven't gotten one yet. I'm very concerned about not having competition in this contract. You can step in there if you want to.
I'll read about it tomorrow.
It's you know, this is a long-term contract. It's a big contract. It's long-term in order to encourage the winning bidder to make capital investments in the service. We're going to get a better price if we have competition. That's the nature of markets. I don't understand, John, candidly, because I haven't had a chance to get into it yet, exactly the nature of the complaint, or whether there's by the other bidder, or whether it's solvable. But I think that's all I can say right now.
Surely you know that's exactly the kind of story, and there have been many others over the years, where the taxpayer says, they want me to pay more, but they're not maximizing their revenues, squeezing out the waste. Obviously, many people still feel that way. Isn't that a hump your plan hasn't gotten over?
Well, that's a hump that all of government has to get over, and it would help if more people knew and understood that you know, the 23 years and out at the T, the old quite rich pension benefit we put an end to, that the healthcare benefits have been made more competitive with not just others in state government, but others in the private sector, that has saved money, that the Turnpike Authority shutting down, which is something we did in partnership with the legislature, has helped save money, that the restructuring of the debt to make it more commercially sound, and doing away with those swaptions. I think you reported on that back when they were happening. Avoided a $250 million hit. There are, you know, and there are projects that are happening much faster and much more efficiently. The Fast 14 project a couple summers ago, where all those bridges, 14 bridges on I-93, replaced in the course of a summer instead of in the course of several years. It cost us a little more to do it that way, but it was a great convenience, I think, for people, and we learned a lot, and we're using some of those techniques elsewhere. The lack of, if it turns out, I mean, the problem that started the question about the competition for the commuter rail is a serious problem. That's not that. I mean, it was this administration that put that out to bid to begin with. We didn't tell people not to bid on it. We had a lot of increase at the outset. I think I'm remembering this right. And now two bidders, and I have an interest, and I think the public has an interest in seeing at least those two bidders survive and are getting the best deal.
You
Last
mentioned
question.
a little bit earlier that you would have to meet somewhere in the middle with the legislature to come up with something that's acceptable to both sides. Does this mean, you're talking about transportation this morning, does this mean that education most likely will have to be sacrificed?
Well, what a shame, because we're not talking about education as if it's some abstraction. We're talking about thousands, tens of thousands of 3- and 4-year-olds resident in Massachusetts, our future, not having access to early education opportunities. We're talking about thousands of middle schoolers whose ability to perform for much of the rest of their lives depends on getting more attention, more focus, and in a longer school day in middle school, and sacrificing that. We're talking about middle-class kids who cannot afford the degrees they need right now for the workforce we're developing. Because the Mass Grant program has lost 3/4 of its buying power. So if you talk about sacrificing education, I ask those who are considering this to really focus on what we're talking about and who we're talking about sacrificing, and not just what. And when I talked about meeting in the middle, I think that's a number in the middle, where between where I started and where the legislature is right now, where we could do important and significant and lasting things in both transportation and in education. But Mr. Secretary, do you want to strap in, Janet?
There's been nonstop talk about transportation. That's all the legislature's talked about. That's all the questions appear. It seems like education has been sort of pushed aside, and it was clear from legislative leaders that that's not their top priority right now in dealing with this issue.
So you can probably tell that my Napoleon complex has increased somewhat. Let's be fair. The good people that we've elected, sent up here, that we've engaged, not only at this Hill, but out in Peru, Massachusetts, and Florida, Massachusetts, and down the South Shore. And we've talked to these folks about the need around early childhood, around the need of investment in K-12, and around the need of investment in higher ed. Everyone nods their head. They get this. They want to do this. We're pushing forward with our plans. I think the governor's proposal is about humanity. It's about the future of this Commonwealth. It's about closing gaps and increasing opportunity. And the governor's right on. Find me a 4-year-old that you want to leave behind. Find me one and say, let's leave this one behind. Because I tell you, I met a bunch of teachers out in West Springfield, Mass. this morning. And I said to them, what's the one thing that you could really use to make a difference? Not only in the work in your school, but across your entire community. And they said if we had some access to early childhood, to K-1 for 4-year-olds, to putting kids in seats that currently don't have high-quality programming, that they could make a difference. Because we know what it takes to close those gaps and proficiency in reading and math. And the governor has called this out as a core, integral strategy of our proposal. And I'm hopeful that the good people that we've elected to represent us, to do the right thing for not only our children but our children's children, will join us. And I know that they're considering this, and I'm hopeful that over the next few days, education will be back on the table as it should be.
So, Governor, not to push you any further, but are you saying no matter what number you come up with, education will get more funding? Is that what you're promising right here now?
Well, it's impossible to promise until I see that number. Education should get funding in those targeted areas where we know it makes a difference. And it should also because, as the Secretary said, the overwhelming number of legislators we've talked to agree that these are the right investments and the right time to make them.
It sounds like you're throwing in the towel.
No, I'm a realist. First of all, let me be. I'm a pragmatist. I understand after 6 years how the building works, and I understand that if the legislative leadership want this bill, they will have this bill, and they will have my veto. But this isn't about personal dynamics. It really is about a fundamentally different approach to governing, and it is about governing, from my perspective, whether we govern for the long term or whether we just Band-Aid things and then pretend like we fixed something. These leaders and this legislature have partnered with us over and over again in the last 6 years to govern for the long term. I'm hoping they will again.
Thank you, Governor.
Thanks, everybody.